Dr. Harbeen Arora is a thought leader, global icon, visionary for women. Dr. Arora is a businesswoman, philanthropist, author, humanitarian, spiritual seeker, and a compelling speaker. Welcome today, Doctor, and I have a lot of questions to ask you. Even introducing you, there are so many titles to describe you. What is the best title that you relate to?
Thank you so much, Chaker, for this opportunity, and my utmost gratitude to my dearest, beloved, most inspiring soul sister, Dr. for giving us this opportunity at the G100 to talk about our work. For your question, Chaker, the simplest answer is I am a spiritual seeker, which means I'm on the path of my soul's journey seeking, and I'm a spiritual speaker and an eternal student. I think that is what describes my essence, my spirit, my approach in life the most, and everything else is a beautiful role that the divine gives me to play so that I just become a better person.
Doctor, today when we talk about well-being and when we talk about being positive and reflecting that positivity outwards, we also we're going through tough times as a humanity worldwide. How can we actually advocate for well-being at a time when fear is shutting us down, letting us, whether it's quarantine, whether it's conflicts, where do we find spiritually and within ourselves, where can we find that path to well-being?
Thank you so much. I mean, these past couple of years, at least for our generation, have been very, very testing times. People of an earlier generation who have seen, for instance, I talk about the times of 1947 when India had her partition. My grandmother used to talk about that as a very, very difficult time. So people of every generation have seen difficult times, and each time we have dealt with those times with greater resilience, finding that strength and force within ourselves, and also finding new perspectives in which to look at humanity as one family and with a spirit of oneness. But I understand what you say. While on the one hand, the COVID pandemic has been an equalizing force. There has been no developed world or developing world. It has hit everybody across genders, generations, countries, economically developed, not so developed, advanced, not so advanced. So it's really equalized in that way. But while it has sort of equalized us in our sense of oneness, it has also created divisive forces because there is fear, like you rightly said, and we feel the other person is an object of contagion, of an infection, and so we wish to create more separation rather than oneness. So this is the dichotomy and the paradox of our times. But I think what we saw in many parts of the world, especially when the second wave was really severe, a lot of humanitarian efforts came up where the nurses, doctors, people, communities stood up for each other. So even albeit by a small margin, but love always triumphs, light always triumphs. And I think I come with great hope and optimism that we will go through this becoming just better societies.
So India was one of the countries that was hit by the pandemic the most. Can you share with us a real example of how people of India came together in order to face the pandemic?
Well, certainly, I come from a community called the Sikh community, and in the Sikh community, there is a tradition of like almost 500 years now, an unbroken tradition of 500 years. So it wasn't a slip of tongue, I meant 500 years of community service. And it started with community food. So even if you go to the Sikh temples, which are called Gurudwaras in any part of India or anywhere in the world, actually, because the Sikh diaspora is everywhere, anybody can go there and partake of free food. It was called the community kitchen, and the community would contribute. Slowly and steadily over the years, that community kitchen and community service has extended itself to any and every quarter where community service is required. So, and the community and people of India in general are also known for a lot of innovation. We have a word in India, in Hindi, called jugaad, which means we innovate, we instantly find solutions, you know. And so, for instance, places which were empty, for instance, even the gurudwaras or even railway tracks, because mobility, people were not really traveling so much, they were all converted into, you know, beds were put, and these were turned into extra capacity for people who needed oxygen cylinders were put there, fundraising was done, community came together, and really we saw an unprecedented, well, actually, in India, it happens all the time. But again, it was nice to go back and feel reassured that the community spirit in India, one of the most ancient civilizations in the world, is alive and kicking. So I think it was a very, very heartening moment to see that, and not just in getting medical devices, but people really came together to support each other morally, mentally, emotionally as well. So yes, we were all hit by the crisis, but really to see all the doctors, nurses, students who were interns in medical colleges, everybody, the government coming in by changing immediately the policies in order to allow the medical students to come and serve and supplement the shortage of the staff in hospitals. I mean, truly everybody was thinking on their feet and doing whatever they could from their end to improve the situation, and we're out of it.
So with G100 and with your work overall, you advocate for women empowerment. A lot argue that this pandemic was unfair to women more than it is to men. What are some of your thoughts on this gender inequality that came as a result of this pandemic, and how ready was the world to be fair in treating, the women of the world actually amid a pandemic?
The problem of women not getting their fair share, not getting their due recognition, has been an old one. And yes, we saw some serious, the world took some steps backward when it came to, COVID, because everything moved at home, work moved at home, families moved at home, and women, who always take a disproportionate share of the burden of responsibilities, also took the brunt of that, having to often forego what they were earlier doing as well. So there were economic losses, emotionally, this was a very trying time. So there were all kinds of things, and there are researches in place which show that women wore the brunt, but women wear the brunt of any kind of crisis all the time. And it's time to change that. So the work that we are doing at G100 now, and what we've been doing for the past 10 years through our various other platforms, this is the 5th platform we are doing, has been really about bringing the women of the world in solidarity. It's about creating a group of women, of the 100 women, the G100. So you have the G7, the G20, and we said, okay, let's bring 100 women who are experts in 100 different fields. And our soul sister, Dr. May, leads for the journalism sector in ethical governance from Lebanon. And we said, let's come together, create a solidarity, have a mission of making gender equality truly a reality in this decade. We know what it takes. We know the governments know what it takes. There are best practices and models in place. But in this decade of action, and it is the United Nations which terms this decade as the decade of action, because I think one of the reasons being that this is the decade when we really make the UN's SDGs, we deliver on the UN SDGs, and gender equality being the UN SDG number 5. So we are saying we will supplement the efforts of all the governments. We will follow up with them, be a pressure group, be an advocacy group, be a think tank, being a policy group, but also because we have a large network of 250,000 women already over the past 10 years, and we have a mission million for next year. We will make it happen in this decade of action. So truly it's about women's solidarity, coming together and saying we mean business in every sense of the word, and putting bold targets in place, and holding ourselves accountable and holding governments accountable.
So one of your titles is a businesswoman, and you're the owner of your business, BIOAYURVEDA. How would it have been starting a business in India and leading such business? How would it have been different if you were a man? Or
Well,
what?
it would be totally different, you know.
So
I
give me
mean,
some
even
examples about that. Like,
certainly, with the, and I would count myself among the very privileged, and I'm talking not just about India, I'm talking globally perspective as well. You know, to start a company like that. So something like, you know, the blood flow of a business is the cash flow, the money, the credit, right? And so if you are, my company is 100% debt free, so it's you know, the family, and we have put together the money into it. And but I just wanted to try out a case study, and you know, I wanted to you know, apply for a loan, and I applied for a small sum, because we would often hear from our networks that it's very difficult to get a loan. So actually, I wanted to try it and see for myself what happens. And it would have been good to get the loan for the business as well. It would have been great. So I applied, and I applied once, twice, thrice, four times, and each time the challenge was the same. If I were a man, things would have been much easier. Each time I had to you know, sort of prove that I was the owner of the business. Each time I had to prove, and I'm saying this is from being a privileged background, you know, where you are unknown, where you have connections, where you have the wherewithal to move things. Even then, when it comes to really at the mindset level, the mindset level is, oh, can we talk to who will, everybody's sort of looking for that missing man, and you know, they want to talk to the man who they would like to have a conversation with. And it's very difficult to trust that the woman will you know, do a good business. So cutting things short, we didn't get the loan still. And yeah, we have a Women's Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, one of the other platforms that we've started. And we have a Banking and Finance Council there, which is led by the MD of Deutsche Bank in India, who's a woman who's leading as the national president. And she did a whole paper and study on it, and we realized that getting credit, access to credit is one of the biggest problems for women entrepreneurs, among other things. But without credit, there is no takeoff for a business. So that is something we're trying to solve through the Women's Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. We are putting a group of women together and putting them in touch with banks and lenders, and making sure that women get access to credit. But it's a small step, but that's what we are trying. We have now 120 councils across the world as well, and 900 councils in India. So we are hoping, as we organize ourselves, and that is very important, which is what we are doing with G100, organizing the women of the world into groups and clusters, because when we get that collective strength with sisterhood and solidarity, we can really have an amplified voice and put forward with more emphasis our concerns to relevant institutions, and make sure follow through and get things done.
Yeah, at the Maishidia Foundation, I've done this conference for a few years now, and it is a platform for people to share some kind of call to action, especially when it relates to matters related to women empowerment. If today you want to send a message from MCF and from women on the front lines, a message to the head of the bank that is refusing your loan because you are a woman, what would this message clearly be, and would your government in such a case step in? And have you reached out to your government? Have you had any kind of communication with the government regarding this outrageous, I think, step by a financial institution?
Well, I think the laws are all in place, and there are government schemes in place. So there is a lot of willingness. There is a political will to do it. But I think what we are dealing here is with the mindsets. So what some of our recommendations include, and we send every year from our Women's Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry recommendations to the government, and some of our recommendations are accepted as well. But it's a work in progress, and we are one of the things that we want to do is really put measures that there is a fund which is dedicated to women entrepreneurs, and it must be disbursed to women entrepreneurs. So banks should not be able to come and say, sorry, we didn't find any women to give it to, or we didn't find enough good business proposals to give it to. They have to and must disburse that loan amount, which is sanctioned every year. So these are some of the things. It is a work in progress, but I think all over the world, I would just give a message that if we don't really wake up and embrace women's entrepreneurship and women's well-being, women are going to organize themselves and get it in any case. But companies that refuse to see the good that is the economic good, the social good, and the need for justice, gender justice that is required in order to look at women's issues, not just for the sake of women, but for the sake of being balanced societies, better societies, more inclusive societies, and unleashing the potential of everybody. If we, as companies, if institutions, we are not going to look it up, then we are not adapting and evolving to the need of the times. And even species, when they don't adapt and evolve, become extinct. So companies should take note of that.
I love the passion you have to this topic, and you speak with so much passion, and I've seen a few of your interviews. Who inspired that in you? If we go back to childhood, which figure in the world or in your community or maybe in your family that inspired you and said, you know what, women empowerment, this path is going to be my own personal path and my own advocacy?
I actually cannot kind of consciously know who inspired that, but if I were to introspect subconsciously, I would say I was surrounded by very strong female role models, starting from my grandmother, a very strong woman. I was talking about the partition that time, seen some very, very rough times, rebuilt the family and protected the family, in very rough and testing times. My mother, who was always a working woman, and also my father, who was like an equal support to my like a real he for she champion, in the sense, without being told as such. He walked the talk. He was like totally supportive of her in every possible way. My aunts around me, I think I just grew up in an environment where I didn't know that women had to be empowered. I just took that as something that's I just learned from very strong women and absorbed their strong energy automatically. It was much later in my life, and I was actually studying in France and doing my PhD, where we had these conversations about women empowerment, feminism, and all of that. And it struck me as if like I hadn't been through anything like that. But it did open my eyes, and it did sensitize me and sensibilize me to the fact that it happens all the time. And I think once I started noticing it, when I started seeing it, after that I couldn't unsee it. I saw it all the time, even done around me, with me, as in the form of mindsets that look at you in society. So it's been a journey, but I think strong female role models provide that kind of energy.
Dr. Harbeen, there's sometimes someone wakes up and said, they're feeling so down towards the world around them or the world in general. And for someone very optimistic and advocating for well-being, do you have these days? Do you have the days that you wake up and you're in you see the world from a dark perspective? And how do you get yourself out of that darkness in such days? Especially like these days, I mean, it's guaranteed that you open your television and you're going to see for sure someone suffering somewhere, a war breaking out somewhere, pandemic-related issues. Do you have these days for someone so positive like you?
Yeah, thank you for that, because it happens to the best of us all the time. We wake up on the wrong side of the bed, we second guess ourselves, we guilt ourselves. But one of the books that I have written is really about my journey into finding that zone and consciously deciding. And I come from a land where we talk a lot about karma, and which karma essentially means that I'm responsible for everything. And I can take the action, I can consciously choose a thought, and I can consciously choose energies which will put me on the path that I would like to be on. So I think coming from a background of strong female role models, which gives me my strength, also having seen in society strong role models, not just in my family. I was growing up in a time when Indira Gandhi was the Prime Minister of India, and also a couple of other women leaders. We do have some very strong women in politics that you see all around. And coupled with the fact that I am deeply spiritually drawn to, we are in India. It's I don't know if it's the spiritual capital of the world, but really, truly a place where everybody who's having a search of the spirit will come to. So I'm very deeply influenced by the spiritual teachings and the spiritual learnings from this beautiful Indian civilization that I'm proud to call my own. And I go back to the teachings of my guru. I go back to the teachings of of this beautiful civilization. We have some great epics that give us some cardinal principles to, kind of go back to the Gita, the Bhagavad Gita, which is like another very, again, cardinal book. But really, it's a journey. It's a work in progress, and I come back to it all the time with my strength that I have, with my spiritual quest that I have, with the personality that I have of constantly learning. And it just feels nicer to see the brighter side of things. And I push myself. I try harder and harder every day. It's not easy. It's painful, especially when you're going through the struggle as well. But anything that you want to practice and build muscle in, like even when you go to the gymnasium or building muscle in, it's painful. When you're lifting those weights, it's painful. But you continue doing it, and you arrive at the other side when you actually have built the muscle and you're able to lift up things that you were not able to lift up earlier. So having that faith to sort of hang in there and reminding yourself, keep the faith, hang in there, go through the pain, go through the struggle, and keep that optimism, and you will arrive on the other side. And the greater the hours of practice you put in, the more masterly you become of whatever you are trying to do, whether it's playing the piano or whether it's running a marathon, whatever is it. If you want to become good at it, you have to keep becoming better at it every day, every moment, with every test, with every passing challenge.
So speaking at getting better at things, G100, I know you're heading to New York next week, I believe you mentioned, and I just want kind of a summary of where's G100 right now, where is it headed to, and an invite that you would like to utilize the Maishadiyat Foundation and Women on the Front Lines to put out for G100.
I would just want everybody, every woman in the world to really kind of belong to this community of 100 great wonderful, beautiful women from all over the world who've come together to create a better world for all, no matter which country we come from, no matter what background, what faith, and really belong, because it is important that we feel that we are part of something bigger and we contribute whatever we are doing to this greater edifice that gets stronger, wiser, and richer with every bit that is put in by every woman anywhere in the world. We are wanting solidarity with a lot of institutions and multilateral groups, which explains our first visit to the United Nations in Geneva in September, followed by our visit to for the European Union meetings, which first started in The Hague in the Netherlands, Rotterdam, Hague in the Netherlands, followed by Brussels, which is the seat of the European Council, the European Union, all the countries over there. So it was really, really nice to talk to all these people. And what came across in all these meetings, that they all had the knowledge, the know-how, the connections to policymakers, but possibly what they could do, with some help with, was what we brought in with our network. And we seek that our network should grow to not just 1 million, maybe 10 million, 100 million. I mean, there are women, and we need all the women on board. Is that actually make sure that we follow through with whatever policies are there. We follow through with our respective governments on gender targets, just as we have climate targets now. And we believe that if we can all focus on UN SDG number 5, which is gender equality, with the same sense of urgency and commitment that we are focusing on the climate crisis and having governments sign on the dotted line on targets and controlling emissions and creating a pollution-free environment, passing on to renewable energy, exactly the same way we can sign on the dotted line for gender targets, ensuring a 50-50 world where women are equally represented in every sphere of life, in all walks of economy and society. And we need the network to make sure that we as a group are following up with our respective governments, with the multilateral groups, with the G7, G20, UN, and ensure that wherever we are lagging behind, and we are lagging behind everywhere, there is no way that the UN SDG number 5, I don't know about the others, but UN SDG 5 is not going to get delivered by 2030 as envisaged, but we want to set it up for success. Not only the SDG 5, but we want to set up the UN 17 sustainable goals for success, because the UN has started a great mission, a great thought process, but it is not up to the UN alone to deliver it. It is incumbent on all the member states, all the countries in the world, and the entire civil society, and especially the women of the world, because we believe that when women are going to get focused, if we can focus on UN SDG 5, then together with this robust participation of women, we will together all deliver all the 17 UN SDGs by 2030. So we want to set up everybody for success. We want to thank the UN for really taking the lead in doing what they have done, in setting the vision and the blueprint. But it is up to the networks of government, civil society, corporates, and all the institutions to really come together in solidarity with mutual respect and empowerment and make things happen.
Dr. Harbeen, how can people connect with G100? I mean, you mentioned that you're putting out an invite. Is there like a platform or a way to connect or to join?
Yes.
Or
Yes, we have a website, and my email is harbeen@gmail.com, HARBEEN@gmail.com. And I welcome everybody, even a million emails, to write to me. We have a huge secretariat, and we will make sure that everybody who's interested to contact us, everybody who's interested to contribute in the sense of just contributing their talent and their strengths and become part of the network, lead a chapter in their country, will be surely given the opportunity.
Well, from this invite and this call to action that you have put for people to join G100, I want to thank you, Dr. Harbeen Arora, for being with us at the Mayshidiyat Foundation, the Women on the Front Lines Conference. I'm going to end this talk with a quote from one of your books. It's about your philosophy that says, "Goals and dreams may change, but what I have always enjoyed is the learning part and path." And with this beautiful motto, I thank you once again, Dr. Harbeen, and all the G100 committee for partaking with the Women on the Front Lines conference. Thank you.
Thank you so much.